My parents gave my sister $560,000 to buy a house but told me, "You're the failure," and gave me nothing. So I stopped calling them. 2 years later, my sister drove past my place and called Dad screaming, "You need to see this. They'll never forget what I did next." Can you imagine building your entire life from nothing, fighting every step of the way, only to discover your own family has been secretly bankrolling your sister's perfect existence? And then just when you think you finally found your footing, they come back, demanding you hand over the one thing you have left. This isn't just a story about family. It's about the moment I finally drew a line in the sand and built a life on my own terms. What happened next, though? That changed everything. Hey everyone, it's Blake here. I just turned 32 yesterday, and as I stand on these 5 acres of woodland my grandparents left me, I feel something I never ever expected. This quiet, wild piece of earth, tucked away from the city, was absolutely not part of my life plan. But oh, how plans change. Especially when your sister gets a $500,000 house as a gift, while you're left with nothing but their constant criticism and crushing disappointment. We grew up in this picture-perfect, upper-middle-class world in Connecticut. My dad, Richard, was this powerhouse corporate lawyer drowning in awards. My mom, Patricia, a tenured economics professor, respected in her field, published the whole 9 yards. From the outside, we were the American dream. A beautiful colonial manicured gardens, 3-car garage. You get the picture. And then there was Olivia. My sister, 3 years younger, but honestly, she felt light years ahead in our parents' eyes. She was the golden child. Straight A report cards, science fair wins, playing violin like a prodigy. Our parents, they beamed. Elaborate parties for every little achievement. Trophies plastered everywhere. Me? I was the family wild card. As my dad so charmingly put it, my grades were fine. Mostly B's, a few A's when a subject actually clicked. Standardized tests? Forget about it. My mind was always miles away, composing shots I wanted to photograph, not crunching numbers. My sanctuary? A camera lens. That's where I found my clarity. Our home wasn't run on love, it was run on achievement. Approval? That was a commodity you earned through success, not something freely given. Dinner was Olivia's nightly stage, a spotlight on her latest triumphs. Meanwhile, I just pushed food around my plate, dreading the inevitable question about my grades or college applications. I still remember when Olivia won the state debate championship in 10th grade. We all went to Disney World for a week. My junior year, when I had my first photography exhibit at the local community center. My mom popped in for 30 minutes before rushing off to a faculty meeting. My dad? Didn't even show. This pattern just continued. Every one of Olivia's soccer games, both parents cheering from the sidelines. Me staying late in the darkroom? I walked home alone, carefully shielding my wet prints in my backpack. They weren't cruel, not exactly. They just invested their time where they saw the greatest return on investment, And that wasn't me. The real defining moment, though, hit in my senior year. I got into a bunch of colleges, including a super prestigious art school in New York and of course the law program at my dad's alma mater. For everyone else, the choice was obvious. For me, not so much. The argument that exploded when I said I was going for photography instead of law, man, it still rings in my ears. We were at the fancy dining table, the one only for special occasions and serious discussions. The chandelier above us cast these harsh, almost theatrical shadows across my dad's face. He slammed his hand down on the polished wood. Slam. No daughter of mine is going to waste her life taking pictures. He roared, his voice cold, final. That is not a real career, Blake. That is a hobby. You need to think about your future. My mom, always the mediator, tried to soften the blow. Darling, we just want what's best for you. Photography is so competitive, so few people actually succeed. But I was done. I am not going to law school, I said, my voice shaking but steel hard underneath. I am going to study photography. That is my decision. The silence that followed? Deafening. Then my dad stood up, straightened his tie, that perfect lawyer posture, and delivered the ultimatum that shattered our relationship forever. If you choose this path, you choose it alone. We will not pay for an art degree. Our money is for real education, not fantasies. I can still see Olivia's face across the table. Shock, yes, but also something else. Pity? Relief that she wasn't the target? Maybe a bit of both. That night, I made the decision that would define the next decade of my life. I accepted the art school offer, knowing full well I'd have to work multiple jobs to make it happen. I applied for every single scholarship, took out student loans, and prepared to forge my path entirely alone. And my dad? He was true to his word. Financial support? Cut off. Completely. My mom would occasionally slip me some cash when we'd grab coffee, but it was never enough. Meanwhile, Olivia? Thriving at her Ivy League university. Tuition, apartment, expenses, all covered. 4 years later, I graduated with my photography degree. And guess who wasn't there? Anyone from my family. I had an empty chair section while my classmates celebrated with beaming parents, flowers, balloons. That day, standing there, I promised myself I would build a life that made me proud, even if it never ever impressed them. Degree in hand, portfolio overflowing with work I was genuinely proud of. I landed in a tiny studio apartment in Brooklyn. No safety net. No family connections. Just raw determination and my well-worn camera. Those first years. A brutal masterclass in persistence. My apartment was barely 500 square feet, a kitchenette so small I could touch both walls at once. The bathroom had this charming perpetual leak that'd serenade me with musical drips at 3 a.m. But it was mine. Every cent of rent came from my hard work, and that made it beautiful. I built my career from the ground up. Wedding gigs for friends of friends who couldn't afford a pro. Product shots for struggling small businesses. Headshots for aspiring actors just as broke as I was. I'd pull 5 barista shifts every morning to cover rent, spend afternoons editing photos, and devote evenings and weekends to building my portfolio. Exhausting? Absolutely. Purposeful. Even more so. I learned to live on a shoestring budget. Thrift stores were my couture, simple home-cooked meals my gourmet. Every spare dollar, every single one, went to camera equipment or student loan payments. I built my own website, spent hours networking at gallery openings, shaking hands, passing out business cards I designed and printed myself at the local coffee shop. But the holidays? Oh, the holidays were the hardest. I'd take the train back to Connecticut, carrying these carefully wrapped, always modest gifts, only to spend the entire weekend feeling like a complete outsider in my own childhood home. Conversations would orbit Olivia's latest achievements, or my parents' elite social circle. When I'd timidly share news about a small exhibit or a new client, the responses were always polite but distant. "That sounds nice, dear," my mom would say, before pivoting right back to Olivia. My dad was less subtle. One Thanksgiving, after I proudly mentioned landing my first major commercial shoot, he just looked up from his plate with this dismissive glance. "It's good you're finding work, Blake. But when are you going to get serious about your future? You're nearly 30. Olivia's already on track to make partner at her firm, and she's engaged to that brilliant neurosurgeon. What do you have to show for yourself?" The comparison to Olivia was a constant, crushing weight. Her career. Flourishing at a prestigious law firm. She'd met Daniel, this neurosurgeon from a well-connected family, at a charity gala. They had an upscale Manhattan apartment, luxurious vacations, a lavish wedding in the works. Her life was the exact blueprint my parents had always envisioned. Still, I clung to them. Monthly calls with my mom, occasional emails, family gatherings where I just endure the subtle digs and disappointed looks. I held on to this desperate hope that eventually, they'd see I was building something meaningful, even if it didn't fit their definition of success. Then came the call that literally changed everything. My grandmother, my mom's mom, passed away unexpectedly. My grandfather had just died 6 months earlier, and the double loss, it left us all reeling. Despite all the family drama, my grandparents were always my rock. The only ones who genuinely cared about my photography, who proudly displayed my work, introducing me as our talented artist. When my parents' rejection hurt the most, my grandma would say, "True happiness comes from following your own path, not someone else's expectations." And my grandpa? He'd wink and add, "Some people just need more time to see what's right in front of them." They lived simply but comfortably on this beautiful piece of land, about 2 hours from the city. 5 acres of woodland, open space, and a cozy farmhouse they'd lovingly renovated themselves. It was my sanctuary, where I could actually breathe and feel accepted. Completely. 2 weeks after my grandmother's funeral, we gathered for the will reading. The air in the lawyer's office was thick with unspoken expectations, somber, tense. I just sat quietly in the corner, still numb with grief, when the lawyer cleared his throat. "To our beloved granddaughter Blake," he began, "we leave our 5-acre property and farmhouse, knowing she will appreciate its beauty and find peace there, as we did." The room went absolutely silent. My dad's face flushed a furious red. My mom's lips pressed into a thin, grim line. Olivia looked genuinely shocked. Me? I just sat there, frozen, unable to process what I just heard. The lawyer kept going, saying the rest of their modest savings would be split among all the grandkids. But after the meeting, my dad cornered me in the hallway, his voice low but vibrating with intensity. "You need to sell that property," he insisted. "It's not practical for you to keep it. We can split the proceeds among the family." I was still reeling. "I need time to think," was all I could stammer out. "There's nothing to think about," he snapped. "You live in Brooklyn. You can't maintain a property that far away. Be reasonable for once in your life." I left that office clutching the property deed, my head spinning with possibilities. I had no clue what I'd do with the land, but a powerful gut feeling told me that selling it would be a betrayal of my grandparents' trust in me. That first visit to the property, after it became officially mine? Overwhelming. Standing on that dirt driveway, keys in hand, looking at what was now my land, it hit me. The farmhouse needed serious work. Paint peeling, the porch sagging, Grandma's once immaculate garden lost in a sea of weeds. But even in its neglected state, it held this undeniable magic. Towering oaks, maples, the gentle burbling of the stream, deer peeking from the forest edge. This was my childhood sanctuary, a place where I felt free. With every step I took, walking the land, reacquainting myself with the old treehouse, the fire pit, the gnarled apple trees, memories flooded back. A growing certainty settled in my chest. This place was meant to be part of my future. My practical side knew Dad was right, partly. Maintaining it from Brooklyn would be a nightmare. Repairs I couldn't afford, taxes, keeping it from becoming totally wild. Selling would be the sensible choice. But when had I ever taken the sensible choice? I went back to Brooklyn with soil under my fingernails and a head buzzing with half-formed ideas. The next day Dad called. Not a request, a summons. A family meeting. When I walked into their house that Saturday, the tension was thick enough to cut. My parents stiff on the couch, Olivia and Daniel right beside them, a united front. I sat on an ottoman, feeling outnumbered. Dad didn't waste a second. "We've decided," he started. "The best course of action is to sell the property. The market's booming. We could get a good price that would benefit everyone." "Everyone meaning you?" I shot back, unable to keep the edge from my voice. "Blake, be reasonable," Mom interjected. "What are you going to do with 5 acres? You can barely keep your tiny apartment in order." Olivia leaned forward, her face a mask of practiced concern. "We're just thinking practically. You're always struggling financially. This could give you a cushion." "And what would my share be exactly?" I asked, already knowing the answer. Dad cleared his throat. "Well, given that your grandparents already gave you the property, which is the bulk of their estate, it would be fair if the proceeds were divided among the rest of us." The injustice of it hit me like a physical punch. "So I get nothing? I sell my inheritance and just hand the money over to all of you? You need to think about what's best for the family," my dad said, his lawyer voice clicking into gear. "This is about being practical." "No," I retorted, a lifetime of frustration bubbling up. "This is about control. This is about you being unable to accept that I might have something valuable that you don't control." The argument blew up. Quickly. Words were exchanged that could never be taken back. And then a moment I will never forget. My dad stood, pointed his finger right at me, his face contorted with pure rage. "You have been nothing but a disappointment since the day you chose that worthless career," he screamed. "A complete and utter failure. We gave you every opportunity and you threw it all away for what? Pictures. While your sister has made something of herself, built a real career, started a real life." The room fell silent. Even Olivia looked shocked. "A real life?" I repeated quietly. "You mean the one you orchestrated for her?" The one you bankrolled completely. Daniel shifted uncomfortably. Olivia wouldn't meet my eyes. What does that mean? My mom asked, her voice suddenly cautious. It means I know about the house, I said, locking eyes with Olivia. The $560,000 house you got as a wedding present while I was working 3 jobs just to make rent. The secret they kept from me exploded into the silence. My parents had bought Olivia and Daniel a luxury townhouse as a wedding gift, custom renovations, designer furnishings, the works. $500,000 in support, while I was completely cut off for pursuing my passion. That was different, my dad insisted. Olivia chose a sensible path. She earned our support. She earned your love, I corrected him. I never did. I stood up. Suddenly, I felt calmer than I had in years. I am not selling the property. Not now. Not ever. It's the one thing in my life that came without conditions, without judgment. I am keeping it. You're making a mistake, my father warned. No, I said, already heading for the door. For the first time in a long time, I am absolutely certain I am not. I walked out without looking back, ignoring my mom's frantic calls to discuss things rationally. In my car, I let out a breath I felt like I'd been holding for years. Then I did something I'd never done before. I drove straight to the property, arriving just as the sun was setting. I parked, walked to the porch, and sat on the steps. Okay, I whispered to the darkening sky. You and me. 2 years. It felt like both an instant and an eternity. The day after that insane family meeting, I did something that even shocked me. I gave notice on my Brooklyn apartment, shoved most of my life into storage, and moved temporarily into that old farmhouse. Just the bare essentials, my camera gear. The first few months, they were hell. The house needed massive repairs I couldn't afford. I slept in the only room without water damage. I showered with a garden hose rigged to an outdoor spigot until I could fix the plumbing. But I learned. Roof leaks. YouTube. Rotted wood. YouTube. Crumbling plaster. You guessed it. My career. It transformed as dramatically as my living situation. My urban photography business was dead. So I pivoted to what was literally in my backyard. I started documenting my journey, restoring the farmhouse, reconnecting with the land. I captured the changing seasons, the wildlife, clearing overgrown paths, uncovering forgotten garden beds. First, I just posted it all on social media just to stay connected. And to my absolute shock, people responded with enthusiasm. My followers grew steadily as I shared not just beautiful nature shots, but the raw, unfiltered reality of my new life. The collapsed ceiling, the raccoons I evicted, the first successful loaf of bread from the ancient wood stove. 6 months in, a popular lifestyle blog featured my story. Overnight, my audience tripled. Then a sustainable living magazine commissioned a photo essay. A small but steady income from my online presence, combined with freelance gigs in nearby towns, started flowing in. With careful budgeting and this growing recognition, I started transforming the property. The barn became my studio. I planted a vegetable garden with grandma's heirloom seeds. I restored the apple orchard, learning to prune from a local farmer. And that local farmer? Warren, my nearest neighbor. He showed up one spring morning with fresh eggs and an offer to help with the sagging porch. In his 50s, weathered hands, kind eyes, Warren became an unexpected friend, a mentor. He taught me so much: how to split firewood, what wild plants were edible, how to fix an engine. In return, I helped him build an online presence for his organic farm, attracting new customers. Our friendship just evolved. 2 solitary people, finding connection through shared work, mutual respect. My social media following turned into a modest but lucrative business. I started hosting weekend photography retreats, teaching people how to capture nature's beauty. The old farmhouse, now partially renovated with Warren's help and skills I never knew I had, became a rustic guest house. I even built 2 tiny cabins deeper in the woods for more guests. The irony wasn't lost on me. The impractical career my parents had dismissed, it was now supporting me completely. The property they said I couldn't maintain, it was my home, my livelihood. I had built something uniquely mine on my terms. My relationship with my family remained distant, but it didn't consume me anymore. Christmas cards, birthday messages. Polite, brief responses to mom's texts. declining family gatherings with simple excuses. The constant ache of their disapproval had faded to a dull, occasional twinge. I found peace in my new routine. Mornings tending the land, days creating in my studio or teaching, evenings on the rebuilt porch watching fireflies. I made real friends here, people who knew me simply as Blake the photographer, not Blake the disappointment. One crisp fall afternoon, as I was out photographing the vibrant foliage along my stream, I heard the crunch of tires on the gravel driveway. Visitors weren't unusual anymore. But when I rounded the corner, I stopped dead. A sleek black SUV I didn't recognize. And standing beside it, staring open-mouthed at my renovated farmhouse, my flourishing garden beds? Olivia. My sister. She looked both exactly the same and completely different. The designer clothes, the perfect hair, familiar. But her expression, something new. Something I couldn't place. When she finally spotted me, camera in hand, her eyes widened. Blake, is that really you? I just nodded, suddenly acutely aware of my work boots, faded jeans, flannel shirt. What are you doing here, Olivia? She vaguely gestured at the property. I was driving to a client meeting, took the back road. I almost didn't recognize the place. She paused, genuinely flustered. You live here now? You actually fixed it up. I do, I replied. And I did. She just shook her head, disbelief etched on her face. I had no idea. No one did. Dad said you were probably just sitting on the property until you got desperate enough to sell. The mention of our father brought back a flood of old memories. Why are you really here, Olivia? I asked, my guard rising. She looked away, then back at me with an expression I'd never seen from her before. Vulnerability. Did you know this whole area is being developed? Luxury homes going up less than a mile from here. A resort company bought out 3 farms already. I nodded slowly. I'd heard rumors. Warren had mentioned the development pressure. Blake, your land could be worth $2 million now. Maybe more. Not a question. A statement. Is that why you stopped by? To tell me about property values? Her composure cracked. Slightly. We talked about it. Okay. The whole family. Dad thought if I talked to you, you might listen about selling. The revelation stung, but honestly, less than it would have 2 years ago. I see. And what commission would you get for convincing me? Olivia flinched like I'd slapped her. Then to my shock, her eyes filled with tears. You know what? You're right. I came here with an agenda. But standing here, seeing what you've built. She gestured around again. I can see why you would never sell this. Her admission surprised me so much that I actually looked at her. Really looked. The designer outfit couldn't hide the dark circles under her eyes. Her perfect manicure didn't disguise the tension in her hands. Are you okay? I asked. The question just slipped out. She laughed, a brittle, humorless sound. Am I okay? Let's see. My marriage is falling apart because Daniel works a 100-hour week, and when he's home we have nothing in common but debt. My job is killing me slowly. And that house, that ridiculous house Mom and Dad bought us? Leaking roof. 30 grand to fix. But I can never admit any of this because I'm the successful one. Right? The one who did everything right. I didn't know what to say. This wasn't the confident, perfect Olivia I'd grown up envying and resenting. I should go, she said abruptly, wiping her eyes. I have a meeting. She got back into her SUV, but before closing the door she looked at me, an unreadable expression on her face. You know what the worst part is? You look happy, Blake. Actually happy. Then she was on her phone, her voice rising as she pulled away. Dad, you will not believe what Blake has done with that property. We need to. The rest of her words vanished as the SUV disappeared, leaving me standing alone, camera in hand, wondering what kind of storm was brewing. Olivia's unexpected visit left me unsettled for days. I'd catch myself glancing towards the driveway, half expecting my whole family to descend. But a week passed, then 2, and I finally started to relax, focusing on my work, on the approaching winter. I just finished winterizing the beehives Warren helped me set up when I heard another vehicle approaching. This time I recognized Olivia's SUV. But what I didn't expect was for her to park next to a rental car that had arrived moments earlier. Olivia stepped out, looking even more polished than last time, like she'd armored herself in designer clothes. From the rental car emerged Daniel, her husband, looking incredibly uncomfortable in clothes that screamed, expensive casual. They stood awkwardly waiting, and I didn't have to wait long. Then a third car. My parents' luxury sedan. Instantly recognizable. My stomach clenched. Dad's face wore that determined expression he used in court. Mom looked anxious beside him. "What is this?" I called out, trying to keep my voice light despite the anxiety twisting inside me. "A family reunion?" "We need to talk, Blake," my father said, completely skipping any greeting, getting straight to the property situation. Before I could respond, Warren's pickup rumbled up the drive, stopping behind their lineup of expensive vehicles. He nodded at me, a silent message of support that warmed me. "I invited Warren to join us," I announced, gesturing to my neighbor. "Since any discussion about this land affects him, too." My father frowned but said nothing as Warren approached. "Shall we go inside?" I suggested, leading this unexpected gathering towards my home. The looks on my family's faces as they stepped into my renovated farmhouse? Almost worth all the tension. The sagging floors were now gleaming. Crumbling plaster replaced with warm, sustainable materials. My kitchen, once a disaster, now boasted reclaimed wood countertops and energy-efficient appliances, blending perfectly with its vintage charm. "You did all this yourself?" my mother asked, surprise breaking through her guarded tone as she ran a hand along a beautiful stretch of countertop Warren had crafted from a fallen oak. "With help," I acknowledged, nodding at Warren. We settled in the living room. My parents, Olivia and Daniel, perched on the sofa I'd reupholstered myself. Warren and I sat in chairs opposite them. Outside, the autumn forest blazed in golden crimson. "This is quite rustic," my father said, clearly struggling to find something negative. "Thank you," I replied simply. "Now what is this about?" Dad cleared his throat, full-on lawyer mode. "As Olivia may have mentioned, this area is rapidly developing. The Ridgeline Resort Group has bought several surrounding properties, planning a major luxury development. Golf courses, spas, high-end homes, the works." I nodded. "I'm aware. 3 of my neighbors have already sold. They're offering extraordinary prices," he continued. "Well above market value. Your 5 acres are particularly valuable because of the stream and the elevation. They are very interested." "And how do you know that?" I asked, already guessing. Daniel spoke for the first time. "I have a patient who sits on their board. When he heard about our connection to property here, he asked if we might facilitate an introduction." "I see." I looked at each of them. "So, you all came here today to convince me to sell?" "To discuss the possibility," Mom corrected gently. "This could be a wonderful opportunity for all of us." "All of us," I echoed. "So, you're still expecting a share of my inheritance?" Dad shifted uncomfortably. "Blake, be reasonable. This land has appreciated enormously, through no effort of your own. It would be fair to distribute the windfall among the family." "No effort." I gestured around the renovated space. "I've put 2 years of sweat and every penny I had into this place. I built a business here. I built a life here. Taking pictures is not a real business," my father dismissed. "Actually," Warren interjected, his quiet voice cutting through the tension, "Blake runs one of the most successful businesses in the county now. Her photography retreats bring visitors from all over the country. They support the local economy. Staying in town, eating at our restaurants, shopping in our stores." My father looked at Warren as if seeing him for the first time. "And you are Warren Milligan, Blake's neighbor and friend." He said the last word with a strange emphasis. Olivia, who'd been uncharacteristically quiet, finally spoke up. "Blake, no one's trying to take anything from you. But this could solve problems for everyone. You could buy a better property somewhere else, somewhere more convenient. We could all benefit." "What problems would it solve for you, Olivia?" I asked directly. She glanced at Daniel, then back at me. "That's not relevant." "I think it is," I countered. "You said your marriage was struggling. You mentioned debt. Is this about money?" Daniel's face flushed. "That's private. Not if you're here asking me to sell my home to solve your problems," I shot back. My mother looked shocked. "Olivia, what is Blake talking about?" The carefully constructed facade Olivia had maintained for so long finally completely cracked. The house is underwater, Mom. The mortgage. The renovations. The lifestyle we thought we were supposed to have. Daniel's medical school debt, my student loans were drowning. But your careers, your salaries. My father sputtered. They go to keeping up appearances, Daniel said quietly. The cars, the clothes, the vacations, the social obligations, the networking events you insist we attend. The country club membership you gifted us that comes with monthly fees we can barely afford. The revelation hung in the air like a thick smoke. My seemingly perfect sister and her successful husband were living a life they couldn't sustain, trapped in a gilded cage of expectations. I had no idea, my mother whispered. Of course you didn't, Olivia said bitterly. We never talk about real things in this family, just achievements and appearances. I looked at my sister with new eyes, seeing not the golden child, but someone as trapped by our parents' expectations as I had once been. The difference? I had escaped. She was still living in that cage. I am not selling the land, I said finally gently. Not to solve financial problems, not to make developers richer, not for any reason. This is my home. You're being selfish, my father accused. But his voice, it lacked its usual conviction. No, I replied. For the first time in my life, I am being true to myself. And I think that scares you more than anything. Warren cleared his throat. If I might make a suggestion, he said. Blake's property isn't just valuable for development. It's valuable as it is. Her photography business is thriving. The organic garden supplies local restaurants. The tiny cabins bring tourism to our community without disrupting its character. What's your point? My father asked impatiently. My point is that Blake has created something worth preserving. Something that benefits more than just one family or one corporation. Something sustainable. A rush of gratitude swelled in me. Warren had articulated exactly what I'd felt but couldn't express. He's right, I said. What I've built here matters. Not just to me but to this community. Olivia looked at me with an expression I'd never seen from her before. Something like respect. I think I understand now. When I drove by and saw what you'd created, I was jealous. Blake, you look so content, so sure of yourself. I've never felt that way. Not once. Her admission stunned me. My perfect, golden sister jealous of me? So that's it? You refuse to consider your family's needs. My father pressed, but I could hear the defeat in his voice. I have considered them, I assured him. But I've also considered my own needs. The needs of this land. The needs of this community. The answer is still no. As the tense conversation continued, Warren excused himself to check on something outside. A few minutes later, he returned with a basket, fresh eggs, late-season vegetables, a jar of honey from my hives. Maybe you folks would like to take these back with you, he offered to my parents. Everything grown right here on Blake's property. Some of the best produce in the county. That simple gesture. It somehow broke the tension. My mother accepted the basket with genuine thanks. My father straightened his jacket, 1,000 times seen gesture. We should go, he said stiffly. We have a long drive back. As they gathered to leave, Olivia hung back. Daniel walked ahead with our parents. Alone in the kitchen, she turned to me. I never understood why you walked away from everything they offered you, she said quietly. Now, I think maybe you were the smart one all along. It was never about smart, I replied. It was about authentic. About finding my own definition of success. She nodded slowly. I need to find mine. I think you can, I told her. It's never too late to change direction. Even with all their expectations, all the investment they've made in you becoming who they wanted you to be. Especially then, I said. Take it from someone who disappointed them thoroughly. The world doesn't end. You just begin again. She hugged me then. An awkward but genuine embrace. It felt like the first real connection we'd shared in decades. I'll call you, she promised. I watched from the porch as they all drove away. Warren stood silently beside me. When the last car disappeared, he turned to me with a small smile. Quite a family you have there. They are, I agreed. For better or worse. You stood your ground, he observed. Not many would have with that much pressure. I looked out over my land, at the life I'd built from nothing but determination and faith in myself. Some things, I said, are worth fighting for. Fast forward another year. I'm standing on the newly built observation deck, looking out over the property. It's transformed in ways I couldn't have imagined. The original farmhouse, beautifully restored. The studio barn expanded. 3 tiny cabins nestled in the trees. The biggest addition? A small eco-retreat center near the stream. A light-filled space built from reclaimed materials. I host extended photography residencies, environmental education programs, wellness retreats. What started as my personal sanctuary is now a thriving community space, honoring the land, sharing its beauty. The journey here? Full of unexpected twists. My parents, after that tentative visit, slowly became more involved. Mom, with her academic background, even helped me develop a curriculum for school groups. Dad, to everyone's surprise, took up photography and sometimes joined my workshops. Olivia? Her transformation was the most dramatic. She left corporate law, found work with an environmental nonprofit, using her expertise to protect natural spaces. She and Daniel divorced amicably. They realized their relationship was built on external expectations. She lives 30 minutes away now, visits regularly, often with her rescue dog, who just loves running through these fields. And Warren? He's not just my partner in business anymore. He's my partner in life. Our relationship evolved from friendship to love, built on shared values. He moved into the farmhouse last spring. Together, we keep improving the property, each project a reflection of our commitment to sustainable living and community. The path to healing with my family hasn't been a straight line. There are still moments of tension, old patterns resurfacing. Dad occasionally starts a sentence about real careers before catching himself. Mom sometimes compares Olivia and me, a habit hard to break. But these moments are rarer now, replaced by genuine efforts to understand and accept who we've become. The most profound change? My relationship with Olivia. The old competitive dynamic transformed into a supportive bond. We've spent hours talking, acknowledging how our parents' expectations shaped us. The golden child and the disappointment, each carrying our own burdens, finally found common ground as sisters and friends. Ready for the group? Warren asks, joining me on the deck. 20 photographers arriving this afternoon. Almost, I reply, leaning into his solid presence. Just taking a moment to appreciate how far we've come. He nods. From a rundown farmhouse to this. Pretty incredible. Not just the property, I clarify. Everything. My family. My work. Finding you. Warren smiles, the corners of his eyes crinkling. Finding ourselves, I think. Separately and together. My parents and Olivia join us for dinner that evening. A monthly tradition. These gatherings aren't always perfect, but they're authentic in a way our family interactions never were before. We talk about real things, disagree respectfully, and leave understanding that love doesn't require agreement or identical paths. And financially, I steadfastly refused to sell to developers, but I found ways to make it sustainable, even profitable. Photography retreats, cabin rentals, educational programs, a steady income. I even published a book of images documenting the land's seasonal changes, opening doors to exhibitions. Most surprisingly, Dad established a family foundation for environmental education and land conservation. Initial funding came from selling their oversized house. They downsized to a comfortable condo closer to me. The foundation's first project? Buying the land adjacent to mine when it came on the market, protecting it, expanding the natural buffer around my 5 acres. Your grandparents would be proud, Mom had said. They always believed in preserving beautiful places. I think of them often as I walk the land, imagining their joy. Their modest inheritance had blossomed into something that benefited not just me, but an entire community. Their gift came without conditions, without expectations. A rare, pure form of love. The afternoon sun cast this incredible golden light across the property as I prepared to welcome the workshop participants. From the deck, I could see everything we'd built. The vegetable gardens, bursting with harvest, the apple orchard heavy with fruit, the beehives humming, the wildflower meadow alive with pollinators. But all these physical transformations, they paled in comparison to the inner journey. I had learned to define success on my own terms, to build a life aligned with my values, not external expectations. I discovered that standing firm in your truth, even when it disappoints others, isn't selfish. It's absolutely necessary for authentic living. Most importantly, I'd learned that families, like photographs, can be recomposed. You can create something new and beautiful from what already exists. As the first cars started arriving, I felt this deep, profound contentment. Not because everything was perfect, but because I had created a life that reflected who I truly was, not who anyone else thought I should be. This land my grandparents left me, it became more than just property, more than an inheritance. It became the canvas where I painted my authentic life, stroke by stroke, choice by choice. Ready to share your wisdom with the world? Warren asked, gesturing towards the approaching guests. I smiled, a wave of gratitude washing over me. Ready as I'll ever be. That evening, after the workshop participants had settled and my family had returned home after dinner, Warren and I sat on the porch swing. Fireflies danced in the yard, the very same porch where years earlier I'd sat alone, wondering what would become of this inherited land, of my uncharted future. You know what I think the real inheritance was? I said softly. Not the land itself, but the belief that I deserved a life that made me happy, that I was allowed to choose my own path. Warren nodded, his arm warm around my shoulders. The best legacies aren't things. They're permissions. Permission to be yourself. Permission to build something meaningful. As darkness settled around us, I thought about the journey that had brought me here. From the disappointed daughter to a confident creator. From an isolated artist to a community builder. From someone constantly seeking approval to someone offering inspiration. The road wasn't easy. It wasn't straight. But every difficult turn, every painful choice, had led me exactly where I needed to be. What are you thinking about? Warren asked, noticing my quiet reflection. That true success isn't measured in property or possessions, I replied, finding the words for the lesson I'd lived. It's measured in authenticity, in the courage to build a life true to yourself, even when others don't understand. In creating space where others feel free to do the same. In the distance, an owl called softly. A familiar evening sound that never failed to remind me how fortunate I was to call this place home. Not just the physical location, but the life I'd created here, the community I'd built, the peace I'd found. I wouldn't change any of it, I whispered. Not even the hardest parts. Because in the end, what had seemed like rejection became the doorway to acceptance. What had felt like failure transformed into the most meaningful success. And what had been given as consolation became my greatest blessing. So what about you? Have you ever had to choose between family expectations and your own authentic path? I would love to hear your stories in the comments below. Remember, your unique journey has value, even if others don't see it yet. If this story resonated with you, please hit that like button, subscribe, and share it with someone who might need to hear that choosing their own path isn't just okay, but sometimes, it's the most courageous thing they can do. Thank you for joining me on this journey, and may you find the courage to build a life that feels true to you, regardless of what anyone else believes you should be doing.